Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Anna Rowinska and I'm your technical host today. Thank you for joining us as we celebrate NAOSH Week with our webinar, Asking Anything, Incident Investigation. For those who do not know us, the Manufacturing Safety Alliance of BC is a not-for-profit health and safety association serving manufacturers and food processors. We invite you to call us to answer your health and safety questions or challenges that you have to help keep your workers safe. Please also visit our website for safety training and resources or information on the Occupational Safety Standard of Excellence Core Certification for BC Manufacturing. We would like to introduce you to our speaker today, Lorne Davies, Combustible Dust Specialist at the Alliance, who will speak about incident investigation and answer any questions you may have pertaining to this topic. Lorne, welcome.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for the nice little introduction there. Well, I'm thankful for all the people that wanted to show up today on a nice Friday afternoon to take part in our little NAOSH week this week. So our topic of the day today is going to be incident investigation and how to do some improvements to your investigation program. Now, this is something that is actually very dear to me because what's going to happen here is if you do a good job of your investigations, you will actually improve your safety performance. And this is something that is a direct route to how good you do your investigations. So if you want to reduce your injuries, do a better job of your investigations. Can everyone see my screen okay?
You're all set, Lord.
Thank you. Just checking. Okay. So just to get started, there's just a few basic principles that I'd like to just review to make sure we're all on the same page. The first thing that I'd like you to know is that incidents are predictable and they are preventable. And you need to actually understand this in order to make progress, because if you think that it's a result of people making mistakes, you're not going to have the right attitude in order to move forward. You also need to understand that communication and training solves issues. So whenever you're having issues, we need to do a better job of these two areas in order to uncover what the problems are. The single biggest problem with most investigations is they turn into fault-finding missions. And this is just the opposite way you want to go in order to find creative ways to solve your problems. And in order to generate credibility, what we need to do is we need to maintain confidentiality of the people involved. As a result, we will build trust and allow us to move forward. So a couple of the common shortfalls that most programs have is we don't have a clearly defined procedure to follow for investigation, and they're all over the map. A lot of investigations that I look at have no accurate identification of what really happened. It was, well, workers should have been more careful. And a lot of times we don't have very good training for investigators. So as a result, we're expecting them to come up with great answers, but we haven't shown them how to do it. The last thing that's, even if we have the first three, the last thing that seems to be always missing is the clear communication of findings and how they're going to lead to prevention of further incidents. So if this is so easy, why is it so difficult? Well, the first bump that we have with all companies is time pressure. We all have a busy plate of things that we try to do, and an incident happening has just upset the apple cart. How much of a imposition in your day should this be? And maybe I can just brush it under the carpet and get on with my other tasks. The other thing that's a concern is when we do an accurate investigation, it's going to uncover some problems in your safety systems. And this is not always comfortable because somebody might not have done something they're supposed to be. And as a result, we're going to uncover failings that are both employee and manager based. Lastly, people aren't comfortable with change. And if we do a good job of investigation, it's going to drive change so that we improve. And people don't like change. They just tend to resist it just for general purposes. So the next thing is, well, now that we've identified some of the pitfalls, how are we going to get around this? And the way that we need to do this is to change our thinking a little bit. So we move to data-based decision-making. That sounds like a big word. But we need to understand that incidents are a result of workplace variables that have not been adequately controlled, and takes a human element out of this. This is just a simple system, and our system is flawed. It allowed someone to get hurt. So as a result, we need to make a change to the system. And we collect the data to find out what part of our system failed. And if we keep the people out of the presentation or out of the equation, then we avoid all those other issues about conflicting interests. Remember that the variables are all within your control. And the key is choosing to commit to actually systematically resolving them. And the key word in this phrase is actually systematic. Remember, this is not a one-trick pony. You're going to have to work at your safety system for years to make it work the way you'd like it to. And it's just an evolution of continually improving a little bit and a little bit at a time. But the investigation process will help you find the areas that need to be improved. So let's just step through this quickly. If we want to improve, the first area that I usually look at is data collection. So one of the problems that most companies have is they collect information that's based on opinion. An opinion is one of the least reliable sources of data. So in order to move away from this, we need to move towards pictures, security video, training documentation, process computer logs. These are not going to change. And they paint a very clear picture of what actually happened. As a result, you're moving towards making decisions with good data. Now, another issue that comes into problem with data collection is witness statements. So often we start investigating incidents a day after the incident actually happened. And that's a completely false way to do things, because people's memory is so fluid that most of the time they don't remember accurate details hours after it happened, never mind days. So the sooner that we get their information down onto a piece of paper after the incident, the more accurate it will be. Now, one other area of common spots that people don't really address is they have a wealth of knowledge on the floor. So when we have an incident take place, it's not a bad idea to canvass some of the people in the area and ask them, have you ever seen this before? Do you know of any previous incidents that were similar? And if you start asking those questions, you'll be surprised how many times people have seen exactly the same incident before. And more often than not, they actually have an idea on how to improve it. So lastly, one of the problems that we have in investigations is bias. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter how long you've been doing investigations, it's something you still always have to work on. So confirmation bias is when you assume you know what happened and look for facts to back up your assumption. This is especially difficult to avoid when you're aware of a worker's past mistakes or behavioral issues. Right away, you jump to conclusions. So again, we always have to hold the reins on our personal thought process and collect the data, and then make our decisions based on the data, not on our assumptions. We follow the facts, not your assumptions, we get to proper root causes. Now, that's the next step, is analyzing the data. First step, whenever we do an investigation, should be to create a sequence of events to help identify the contributing causes lead up to the incident and the effectiveness of protection systems before and after the incident. And this is really important because it helps organize all the facts into a chronological order for us to see where the data does not actually align properly, and it forces us to ask more questions. We need to scrutinize as many systems as possible for effectiveness and document the ones that are working well as well as the ones that aren't. So if you think about this from a hazard identification perspective, we have threats on one side of the equation, things that can go wrong. We have an event, which is where someone possibly gets hurt. And then we have mitigation strategies on the other side of the equation to reduce the injury or to reduce the damage to the company. When we do an incident investigation, so often our investigation stops at the event, but we don't follow through to see how long did it take to get first aid to the scene? How long did it take for someone to find a fire extinguisher? How long did it take for extra help to show up? These are all parts of your safety systems that we can check during an incident investigation and just confirm that they're working the way that we intend them to. Now, lastly, the reason that we do incident investigations is to come up with good corrective actions to prevent this from happening again. That's the whole purpose. So remember that we need to create a corrective action for each deficiency uncovered, and we need to track it on something like a corrective action log to make sure it gets assigned to someone to get dealt with and it's actually completed. Doing investigations and then not completing the corrective actions, we might as well not bother. So remember also that we need to communicate the completed actions to the rest of the workforce so people understand what we're actually accomplishing by doing these investigations. When they can see that they're actually driving change in your organization, people are a lot more eager to take part when they can see the positive changes that happen as a result. Now, the last thing on my list here is confidentiality. If we fail to keep personal data protected when we're dealing with investigations, this undermines our credibility and no one wants to play with us. So if we do it in a professional manner, we will build trust and credibility so people feel comfortable in dealing with you and giving you information that might have a personal nature. Again, if we have good data, we have good results. Next on our list is the document review. We want to involve senior management in review of investigation reports. They often have diverse experience and alternate solutions as a result of their different view of company future activities. So we don't want to leave them out of the situation. Also, if your investigations are not so good, a lot of times senior managers will look at that and say, maybe we need to train our investigators better. They've seen better investigations in previous experiences. So again, bringing them into the loop helps you get a better investigation program to happen. Now that's just a little primer for today. So from here, I'd like to start taking a few questions and see what you guys are having issues with.
Thank you, Lorne, for that great presentation and insight. We did have a few questions sent to us before your presentation, so we'll start there. But in the meantime, please put in your questions in the Q&A or raise your hand and we'll get you on the screen to have a conversation with Lorne. For one of the questions that was pre-submitted, and I know you spoke to this, but why do we need to continue with the sequence of events past the incident time and why is it important?
Well, this is really a bonus question because what amounts to is that we can focus on the actual incident and we will get some corrective actions and we'll get a feeling for things in this particular area. But by continuing the sequence of events past the incident to actually where the patient was actually evacuated off-site to medical aid, for instance, by doing that, we will also check on our first aid systems and our communication systems, our supervisory systems, and all our policies and procedures that help with emergency response. So by doing this, we will critique those systems at the same time, and we will get a lot more bang for our buck out of our investigation. And as a result, we will have an idea that our systems either worked really well or they need a little bit more improvement to make them better for the next incident.
Thanks, Lorne. Another question that came in earlier was, how can we encourage better data collection?
Well, this is one of the things that we have to deal with all companies. Supervisors are under a lot of stress already, just dealing with the crews and the issues, never mind when they actually have a serious incident. And one of the ways that we can support better data collection is to support our supervisors. And just as an example here, if I go over here, let's bring this up here. One of the things that I recommend to our clients is that they build an investigation kit. And this investigation kit is a pretty simple situation. It's just basically taking a gym bag and filling it up with all the things that an investigator needs, so that when a supervisor goes out to look at an incident, he has everything he needs in that bag. So if he needs to block off the area to protect it from other workers, he's got some flagging tape in the bag. If he needs to hand out some witness statements to get early witness statements going soon, they're right in the bag. If it's a serious incident and he needs to contact the CEO, he's got a emergency check or emergency contact list for his company people and for people like WorkSafe BC, so he doesn't have to start looking up numbers. I'll challenge the group. How many of you could dial your CEO at 10 o'clock tonight and get him? or even know his number. So again, having this critical information is vital to having a smooth response and to giving the supervisors some support so they're not feeling frustrated because they can't find this information. A few other things that they can use sometimes are a tape measure or some flashlight, for instance, for looking and checking on certain things if it's dark. So a camera is vital to taking good pictures, because once you've taken pictures, that data is not going to change. And it's very important to get that information collected as soon as possible after the incident. So this again just supports the supervisor so that he has an easier time. And as a result, as a committee member, you will get a lot better information in your investigations, regardless of what time of day or night they happen.
Thanks, Lorne. Another question that was pre-sent earlier was, does a senior manager have to review the incident investigations?
So this is not a WorkSafe BC requirement, but by involving your senior managers in reviewing the investigations, they are aware of the issues that are occurring every day on the floor. And the senior managers have a different viewpoint than the supervisors because they have an understanding of the long-term goals of the company and equipment purchases, etc. And when they see issues with certain pieces of equipment, it might be just the little nudge that they need to move to a better piece of equipment because of the problems that are happening. But by not having them take part or review the investigations, then they don't realize the consequence of not moving to that new piece of equipment, for instance. So bringing them into the loop just lubricates the whole process.
Thanks, Lorne. Another question that's come in, should near misses be investigated in a similar manner?
Near misses are a gift. So understand that most of us do investigations because we have to. It's a requirement under the regulations. And we do it somewhat grudgingly because it's interrupting our day. But understand that if we do a near miss investigation, that no one has got hurt. So there's been no cost to our employees and there's been no cost to our company. So this is by far the best investigation to do. And this also will correct the problems in your safety systems. So you get this for free. So this is the best investigation you can do. And I actually encourage companies to reward their employees for bringing them forward. Normally, companies or people are a little bit leery to bring near misses forward because it usually demonstrates some lack of the system or a personal judgment failure. But saying that, all people are susceptible to that same judgment failure. So when we look at our systems and see why they aren't protected, we can modify them so they don't happen again. For every serious incident that I've been associated with as far as investigations go, there's been 3 to 5 near misses previously that are almost identical. And if we would have taken action on those near misses, we would never have had to have the serious incident. And I'd like to share that with a group that if you have a near miss, this is a gift. And working or delving into the issues and why it happened are the best thing that you can do, because no one's got hurt. There is no costs, there is no premiums, there is no rehabilitation required. So again, near misses are a gift. If someone brings it to your attention, please take action on it. And some of them will be minor, but you'll get a few of them that will be treasures. So again, don't harangue someone for bringing you a near miss. Say thank you, because this is a gift.
Thanks, Lorne. Another question for you. How can we categorize the factors that lead to investigation?
This one here, I'm not quite understanding. Could you maybe repeat that one, Anna, please?
Of course. How can we categorize the factors that lead to investigation?
Well, there's multiple systems depending on which system you're using, whether it's using something like 5Y or Taproot or DNV or that will give you corrective or give you causal factors, etc. The key part from my perspective is that you follow a systematic approach. I don't necessarily endorse one over the other. The key part is that you follow a systematic approach and ask all the questions. If you ask good questions, you'll get good answers. And as a result, you'll boil them down into some serious issues in your safety systems. And then you can work on corrective actions. So I'm not going to endorse a particular company's strategy. It's just a matter of following a systematic approach. And as soon as you start doing that for all of your incidents, you'll see improvement.
Thank you, Lorne. Those are the questions that have come in. So we would definitely love to open it up to the audience and attendance. Please let us know any other questions or near misses or stories that you have. And Lorne can happily answer and provide some guidance. So we'll leave it open here for a few minutes for our attendees to send some questions and get back to you with any other ones that come through.
Sounds like a pretty quiet group out there today. Must be Friday.
I think it's Friday. Well, there was a recent article or news update that I think we all saw yesterday about what happened in a workplace in Richmond. What would be the next steps in a situation like that if somebody did have an incident in their facility? What and how do they act with media, with third-party stakeholders, and so forth?
This all boils down to your incident investigation policy and the steps that you lay out. So depending on the size of your company, on the geographical importance, on the political importance of your particular company, you want to have clear steps laid out so that the right people talk to the media about certain things, the right steps are taken to protect employees, and the right steps are taken to protect your company. Again, winging this is the wrong idea, because the wrong thing gets out all the time. And then you have to worry about how you're going to correct it. So again, having a plan, having a policy, this is the steps, having it clearly communicated to your supervisors, putting it in the kit so they have a procedure to follow. Is it this type of incident? Here's the people I have to call. 1, 2, 3. If it's this type of incident, here's the people I have to call. If it's this type of incident, I don't need to call anyone. So again, stepping that out, making sure that your people understand exactly what they need to do when something goes wrong, whether it's an environmental spill or property damage, or hopefully not an employee injury. But at the end of the day, everyone needs to be informed so that they're doing the right thing. And it comes from doing the investigation all the way through to the emergency response for these type of events.
Thanks, Lorne. Should the supervisor of the department not be involved in the investigation, or do you get another outside supervisor to help with transparency?
This is dependent on the volume of supervisors and people that you have available. Sometimes it's nicer to use a supervisor from an adjacent division or separation of the company. But that doesn't mean that a supervisor of this particular area can't take part. It's just a matter of that his influence is counteracted by influence from the safety committee members so that we get the right facts down. And we have to be careful with this because, again, sometimes we will uncover that this was a supervisor failing. But we have to be bigger than that and realize that if our supervisors need training on certain elements, that the best way to do this is to acknowledge it and get them trained, not ignore it and not put it down so it never happens. So again, these are system failures we're looking for. We're not looking at blaming people. We're saying if the supervisor training was lacking, we need to improve it. And like I say, everyone can own up to that. And the biggest part of investigation is actually owning the fact that you are responsible for the safety of your people on your site. And if someone has got hurt, your systems have failed. And it's not someone else's systems, it's yours. So let's own it and let's fix it and let's move on. And if you take that type of approach, your company will not be having incidents for very long.
Thanks, Lorne. Another question came in. I did ask for just a bit of elaboration, but it's asked of for the different systems that you have mentioned, how do you decide which system to use?
It's all in the matter of the number of people that you have present at your work site and the amount of complexity that you have in your work activity. For instance, if you were running an airline, I would suggest Taproot because it's a very complex system and it has lots of detail in it. And if you have an airplane crash, you're going to have a lot of detail on what went wrong. If you're running an ice cream stand, you don't need that kind of detail. So again, you need to pick it relative to the people that you have and the complexity of the task that you're doing. And this is where you can talk to one of your safety advisors or give us a call and we'll try to help you through this. But the key part is just following a systematic approach. And if you can start with a simple system like 5Y and start with that, and then as you get bigger and more complex, you can look at modifying it. That's a good way to go. But again, the key is systematic as opposed to a particular type.
Thanks, Lorne. We're at that junction again. Any other questions? Does anybody have? Oh, one just come in. What are your thoughts about using a very basic 5Y investigation for every report to first aid in addition to the full investigations required by a WorkSafe PC?
I'm good with it. If you do a good job of 5Y, you'll come up with good data. And if you follow that system consistently, you will end up with good results. So again, the key is consistently. And in order to do it consistently, you need to train your supervisors and safety committee members on the requirements so that they actually follow the system the way it was intended. And unfortunately, a lot of the systems that we do, we fall short on some of the training and we shortcut the systems a little bit so we don't get the systematic approach that was intended. But if you follow the 5Y system, I think that you would be just fine.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Lorne. Any other questions? Looks like your presentation just hit all the points correctly here, Lorne. So we'll give the audience a few more minutes. Again, please send your questions. Otherwise, we can end early today on the Friday. Just ensure that Lorne's time is used to the best opportunity that we can. All right, Lorne, I feel like everybody has asked their questions and appreciates your time. So I think at this time we can conclude our Ask Me Anything session. We will be sending out a follow-up afterwards. Go ahead, Lorne.
I'll just have a few closing remarks just before we let everyone go. Remember that if you are struggling with investigations, there is multiple training avenues to help with that, whether it's e-learning or virtual-led or instructor-led training offered through the Alliance. Remember that you can always reach out and just ask some questions and people can step you through some of the areas that you're having problems with. Remember that everyone in the province is in the same boat, that investigations are something that all companies struggle with, and don't be afraid to ask some questions. Lastly, I'd like you to remember that if you do a good job on investigations, it will make a big difference to your company. When I first started with investigations, we filled out 3 corrective actions for each investigation because that's how many spaces were on the form. We found that we did the same incident roughly about 3 times before we stopped the incident from happening. And then we decided that instead of doing 3 corrective actions, we would do all the corrective actions we could come up with. And sometimes we could stop the incident from reoccurring if we did it once. So that's my suggestion for you guys, is to spend a little extra time to ask the extra questions, come up with some better corrective actions, and prevent having to do it 2 or 3 times to get them all. Anyhow, I'd like to thank you for your time today and wish you all the best in your safety journey. Have a good day.
Thanks so much, Lorne. We really appreciate you taking the time today to speak with us. So again, that was Lorne. We will share his information post session for all of you. And we want to remind you as well that there are more resources available on our website. So make sure to visit our media library for on-demand content, news, and resources and event information as it comes through. Lastly, we also have another webinar coming up on May 27th, Government and Industry Town Hall, The Road Ahead for BC Business in the Recovery. Registration is now open, so make sure to check our website for additional details. We have Minister of Labor, Harry Baines, joining us, as well as CEO from Sunripe, Leslie Bradley, CEO from Fine Food Choice, Jason Longden, CEO from the Mental Canadian Mental Health Association, Jonathan Morris, and Dr. Michael Schwartz from Vancouver Coastal Health. So thank you all for joining us today. Please take the survey in your browser or inbox to share with your feedback and suggestions to help us improve future webinars. We will email you tomorrow with a link to the recorded webinar and related resources. Feel free to share these and follow us on social media for more news, resources, and future events. Thank you and have a great and safe day.